Howdy y'all, and welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. This week, we have some mid-powered decks to show off, including two from the latest Dragons of Tarkir set. Let's get to those brews. First up is Matt, playing Miku, Queen Electric, aka Brago, King Eternal. This deck is a tried and true blink deck, hoping to connect with Brago to blink all sorts of permanents, to reset mana rocks, draw cards, and generally just generate tons of value. Up next is Chandler, who brewed Teval, the Balanced Scale. Chandler built this deck as a Sultai lands deck, looking to take advantage of Teval's triggered abilities to dump lands onto the battlefield and assemble a zombie army in the process. Third is Jason on Felothar, the Steadfast. Jason likes big butts, and he cannot lie, wanting to attack with big booty defenders and also sacrifice those big booty creatures to draw a bunch of cards and only discard a few cards. Last up is Ethan on Saskia, the Unyielding. Ethan's recruiting all sorts of legendary creatures in this legendary aggro deck, hoping to win by pummeling his opponent's faces in. We're about to get to the game, but before that, go ahead and give us a like and let us know down in the comments which deck you're rooting for. Links to our socials, deck lists, and public Discord are all in the description below. Our channel is partnered with Dragon Shield, so if you want to pick up any new sleeves or magic-related products, check out the affiliate link down in the description below. Use the code SMOOTH5 for 5% off your entire order at checkout. Now, onto the video!
Alright, looks like Matt wins the die roll. He'll start off with a tapped Misrise Village and he'll pass to Chandler, who plays a tapped Watery Grave and passes to Jason, who plays a Bountiful Promenade and passes to Ethan, who plays a Marsh Flats and he'll fetch for an Indatha Triumph and then pass to Matt. Matt starts off with a basic island and then he's got an excellent turn too. He'll play Soul Ring into a Zorius Signet. And then he'll pass the turn to Chandler, who will play a basic forest and then cast a Sakura Tribelder. He looks around the table, sees there's probably no haste coming at him, so he'll go ahead and sacrifice it for a basic swamp and pass to Jason while searching. And it seems this turn cycle is just for ramp, because Jason will play a forest and cast an Arcane Signet and then pass to Ethan, and Ethan will play a Spire Garden and a Farseek. Said Farseek finds him a Jetmir's Garden and he'll pass to Matt. That guy Matt plays a basic Plains, and then he'll tap for 4 and cast Brago. Hatsune Miku. Anyways, the turn is now passed to Chandler, and he'll start off with a Rejuvenating Springs his land for turn, then he'll tap for 4 and cast his commander, Teval, and then he'll pass to Jason. And Jason will start his turn off with an Overgrown Battlements. He'll then cast a Perimeter Captain, unfortunately miss a land drop, and then pass to Ethan. Ethan will start off by casting Rhythm of the Wild, then he'll play a tapped Sacred Foundry and pass. Matt starts his turn off with a Glacial Fortress, then he'll tap for 4 and cast Enduring Curiosity, then he'll move to combat. Hatsune Brago will hit Jason for 2 commander, and Matt will draw a card. Mana Rocks and Hatsune Brago will also be blinked, and then Matt passes the turn. Chandler starts his turn off with a Fabled Passage, and he'll fetch with it for a basic island. He'll then cast a Kishla Skimmer, and then move to combat. 4 commander is swung over at Matt. Attack trigger. Chandler will mill a Snow Swamp, a Hedge Maze, and a Rhystic Study, and then he'll return the Hedge Maze from his graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Both of his creatures will trigger, and he has a Surveil. He'll resolve the creation of his 2/2 Druid Zombie first, then he'll Surveil a Command Tower to the graveyard, then draw a card. No blocks from Matt. He'll then move to his post-combat main phase and cast an Aftermath Analyst. He'll mill 3 more cards on ETB, and this will hit Otawara, Farseek, and Steward of the Harvest. And then he'll pass the turn to Jason. Now that his Overgrown Battlements can tap, he'll float 2 mana, then tap for an additional 3 to cast Shadrix Silverquill. He'll then pass through combat, and he is fully aware he could just give Ethan +1/+1 counters on his creatures, but he decides to be friendly, and he gives Ethan an Inkling instead, and he'll draw a card and lose a life. And then in his second main phase, Jason will thankfully find a land. It's an Exotic Orchard. And then the turn is passed to Ethan. He'll play a basic forest as land for turn, and now that he has a creature, he'll cast Toski, Bearer of Secrets. It'll gain a counter as it enters, and then Ethan moves to combat, and he'll swing 2 in the air at Chandler, who doesn't block, so Ethan will draw a card. The turn is then passed to Matt, and he'll start off with a basic island. Then he'll cast a Spark Double, and as it enters, it becomes another Enduring Curiosity, then Matt moves to combat. Miku hits Ethan in the air for 2, and Matt will draw 2 cards now. His blinks are essentially treated as a dramatic reversal, so post-combat he'll cast a Fellwar Stone and then pass the turn to Chandler, who will start by moving to combat, and he'll swing for 4 in the air at Matt again. Teval will trigger, so he mills 3. Those will be Grave Crawler, Glacierwood Siege, and Sidisi. And then Snow-Covered Swamp is returned to the battlefield tapped. He has a couple triggers, he'll make another 2/2, and draw a card. Post-combat, he'll play a Verdant Catacombs as his land drop, then he'll cast Grave Crawler from his graveyard and make another 2/2 Druid Zombie. Then he'll fetch with his Verdant Catacombs for a tapped Undercity Sewers, and his Surveil will put Cephalid Coliseum to the graveyard. And then he'll pass the turn to Jason. Jason's turn will begin with an Orin Frostfang. He'll then move to combat, and Shadrick's Silverquill will trigger. Jason draws a card and loses a life, and Matt will make a 2/1 Inkling. Then Mr. Silverquill is swung over at Ethan, who can't block, and thanks to Double Strike, Jason draws 2 cards off of his Frostfang. Post-combat, he'll shock in a Godless Shrine, and then he'll tap for 2 and cast Lightning Greaves. The Greaves are moved over to Overgrown Battlements, and then the turn is passed to Ethan. And Ethan's turn starts off with a Bloodstained Mire, and then he'll move to combat. Inkling is swung over at Jason, who can't block it, and Toski has to attack, so it goes at Matt, and Matt will block. Ethan still gets a card off Toski, thankfully. Post-combat, Ethan will cast Shanid, and it enters with a counter. And then the turn is passed to Matt. He'll start off with a tapped Witch Blessed Meadow, and then he'll move to combat. Inkling hits Ethan, Brago hits Jason, and Matt draws 4 cards. Blink will untap Hatsune Brago, then Matt will just pass the turn and discard 2 lands. Chandler did want to stop on Instep though and sacrifice his Aftermath Analyst, and this will get him 5 lands from his graveyard to the battlefield tapped. He will get another Zombie Druid from this, but not a card, because that ability specifically says during your turn. Anyways, he'll move to his turn. He'll start by shortcutting a bit by fetching with both Verdant Catacombs and Fabled Passage at the same time. This will get him a Snow Forest and an Island, and then he'll tap for 5 and cast Will of the Sultai, choosing both modes, and the target for the counters will be Kushala Skirmisher. Matt decides this cannot be, so he decides to flash in Venser. Chandler decides that this cannot be, so he will attempt to Arcane Denial it, and that will resolve. Venser is countered. So Chandler's Will of the Sultai will then resolve. The first mode will mill Zoggoth Triome, Hermit Druid, and Yavimaya Coast. Then all lands from his graveyard will go to the battlefield tapped, which will be the 2 just named, and then the 2 fetches he fetched with earlier this turn. Then after counting his lands, his Skirmisher will get 17 +1/+1 counters and trample until end of turn. He'll also get another Druid Zombie, and he'll draw a card. Chandler will then move to combat. He'll swing his commander back over at Matt, and then he can't decide if Ethan or Jason is getting his 19 power flyer trampler. Ethan offers that him and Jason should roll for it, and Chandler says, alright, first one to roll a 7 on 2d6 does not get hit. And Jason is the first to get there, so Ethan takes 19 in the air. And because of the 17 counters, Ethan does accidentally take 17, but that gets caught in a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and mark him for 19. Chandler also remembers that he has an attack trigger, so he'll mill Dakmor Salvage, Shipwreck Marsh, and Stitcher Supplier. And the Shipwreck Marsh will go to the battlefield tapped. And this gets him yet another 2/2. Post-combat, he'll cast a Ripples of Undeath, and then the turn is passed to Jason. First thing he does is move to combat. Shadrix will draw him a card and lose him a life, and Ethan gets another 2/1. Then Big Silver Quill Dragon will swing over at Chandler. Double Strike damage will draw Jason 2 cards. He'll then move to post-combat, play a Vault of Champions, then tap out to cast Last March of the Ents. This lets him draw 6 cards, and then put any number of creatures from his hand to the battlefield. He'll start off with a Welcoming Vampire, then Wingmantle Chaplain, Rampart Architect, an Arbor Adherent, a Tree of Redemption, and a Shield Sphere. There's a lot of ETB triggers coming from the Chaplain and the Rampart Architect, and because the Chaplain both sees all these other creatures enter and enters with them, Jason's going to make a lot of birds. So in total, he gets 7 birds, 1 wall token, and also a card from Welcoming Vampire. Jason will then move Lightning Greaves over to Tree of Redemption, and then pass the turn over to Ethan. Ethan will stay on end step by fetching with Bloodstained Mire for a Zia Torres Proving Ground, and then we'll move to his turn, where he will completely tap out and cast a Final Showdown, choosing all modes except creatures lose all abilities. So it resolves. The creature that gets indestructible is the Sleeper Scourge, and then everything dies. Matt's enduring creatures will come back as non-creatures. Here's a funny little interaction for you. Since Spark Double has no creatures or planeswalkers to copy, it comes back as an enchantment with just no abilities. And Rampart Architect gets Jason a bunch of lands. After this, Ethan will move to combat. Shanid is swung over at Chandler and Toski over at Matt to put everyone at a little more even life total, and Ethan will draw 2 cards. He'll then pass the turn, and Matt stays on end step to cast a Ghostly Flicker, targeting his Witch Blessed Meadow and Soul Ring. The Soul Ring essentially just untaps, and the Witch Blessed Meadow will come back as Witch Enchanter, and he blows up Chandler's Ripples of Undeath. We'll then move to Matt's turn, where he'll play a Command Tower and then cast a Rhystic Study, ya bastard. After this, he'll tap for 5 and cast Yorion. With that spark double out, Matt's going to get a lot of blinks over every turn cycle from now on, so Chandler decides to respond to OG Yorion's ETB trigger by Assassin's Trophying it. He does pay 1. So Yorion's destroyed, Matt gets a Plains, and then the ETB trigger will resolve, and everything that isn't Rhystic Study or a land will be exiled. He'll then cast a Dowerport Mage, and then pass the turn. On end step, everything comes back. His enchantments come back as creatures, and Spark Double will become a Dowerport Mage, and the Witch Enchanter blows up Lightning Greaves. And then we'll move to Chandler's turn. Chandler starts his turn off by tapping for 4 and then delving 5. Okay, what spell could this be? Oh, it's an Afterlife from the Loam. The 4 mana was to pay for the 3 black, and then 1 for Rhystic Study. With this, Chandler will get Sidisi from his own graveyard, Venser from Matt's, and Shadrick Silverquill from Jason's graveyard, and return them to his battlefield. ETB triggers will see Rhystic Study bounce to Matt's hand, and then he'll mill 3. And those mills are Underground Mortuary, Nature's Lore, and Yavimaya. He'll then cast a Conduit of Worlds and play the Yavimaya from his graveyard as his land drop. He'll then pass the turn, and through combat, Silverquill will trigger, and he's feeling awfully generous. He lets Jason draw and lose, and he gives Ethan's creatures counters and asks him to hit Matt. He'll then cast a Skull Prophet and pass the turn. Jason starts off with Felothar, then he'll cast Catapult Fodder, and then play an Underground Mortuary and Surveil to the top. The turn is then passed to Ethan. He starts his turn off with a basic swamp, and then he'll cast Dihada, Binder of Wills. Shinid will trigger, so Ethan will draw and lose, and then Dihada is upticked, targeting Shinid. So it gains Vigilance, Lifelink, and Indestructible. He'll then cast a Brina, and he'll give it haste when it enters. And there's also another Shinid trigger. Ethan will then move to combat. Brina goes at Jason, Toski goes at Chandler, and then Shinid goes over at Matt. 2 Brina triggers are put on the stack, and counters go on Shinid. Matt will block Shinid with his Enduring Creature and Witch Enchanter, and Chandler will block with Shadrick Silverquill and Venser. Then Matt says, buff 4 damage, final showdown. Spring the mode, creatures lose all abilities. And also something, Witch Enchanter will gain Indestructible after that. This makes this combat a little more interesting because Toski will die, so will Venser and the Enduring Curiosity. Then since this was after blocks but before damage, Jason still takes his 1 to Brina. Alright, the turn is then passed to Matt and he'll start off with a basic Plains. He'll then cast a Charming Prince, and this exiles Witch Enchanter on ETB. When it leaves the field, he'll draw 2, and then after this he'll cast a Rhystic Study and pass. When Witch Enchanter comes back on end step, it blows up Conduit of Worlds. Alright, let's move to Chandler's turn now, where he'll dredge Stackmore Salvage. This will mill a land and Eternal Witness, so he gets a 2/2 zombie. He'll then move to combat, and Shadrix will trigger, he'll draw a card and lose a life, and Jason makes an Inkling. Then Shadrix will hit Matt in the air for 4. Chandler will then cast a Muldrotha, the Gravetide, and he does pay the 1. He'll now start casting some silly little things from his graveyard. First up is Kishla Skirmisher, and he will pay the 1. Then he'll cast his Rhystic Study, and he does pay the 1. And his Skirmisher will trigger, so he'll draw a card. Then he'll cast a Hedge Shredder as his artifact, and this will mill a Hedron Crab and Toxic Deluge on ETB. And he does pay the 1. He'll also get another 2/2 off Sidisi, and then he'll pass the turn. Matt stops on end step though to channel Otawara and bounce Chandler's Rhystic Study. Then we'll move to Jason's turn. He'll start off with a Wall of Roots, paying the 1. Then he'll pass to combat, and his Catapult Fodder will transform into Catapult Captain. Jason will then swing his 2/1 Inkling over at Chandler, who blocks with his 2/2 because that 2/1 will only deal 1 damage. Jason does not care though, because he was after that Brina card, and Brina gets her own counters. After combat, Jason will cast a Wall of Omens to draw another card. Then said Wall of Omens is sacrificed to Felothar, so Jason draws 4. After this, Jason will tap out and put a Naughty Boy counter on his Wall of Roots, and this will help him cast a Fecund Green Shell. Great card. When it ETBs, he'll look at the top, and it's not a land, so he'll put it to his hand. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and he'll start off with a Command Tower. He'll then tap for 5 and drop URB. Oh dear, Shinid trigger. And he doesn't pay the 1. Matt has a response. It's to activate his Dowerport Mage to bounce Charming Prince to his hand, and he'll draw 2 cards. Then Chandler will activate Skull Prophet to mill 2. They really don't matter. Matt will also float a white. Then all non-legendary, non-land permanents are exiled. After this, Ethan will tap for his last 4 mana and cast Saskia the Unyielding. Shinid trigger, and then Matt will become Saskia's focus. Dihada is then upticked, targeting Shinid again, and then Ethan will move to combat. Matt has a response before his 1 white disappears, and he will cast Path to Exile on Muldrotha, and Chandler will fail to find. Ethan finally gets to actually go to combat now, and he'll swing Brina and Saskia at Jason and Shinid at Chandler. There are no blocks. But there are 2 Brina triggers, and 4 more counters will go on Shinid. So Chandler will take 12 damage, Jason 6, and then Matt will take 18. And since the damage that Matt is taking is technically coming from Shinid and not Saskia herself, Ethan gains that extra life as well. So he's back up to 31. Alright, that was quite the turn for Ethan. He'll pass the turn to Matt and he has to discard 3 cards on cleanup. Alright, on Matt's turn, the first thing he'll do is tutor. It's an enlightened one. He'll find the One Ring to the top of his library. He'll then draw it by casting a Spirited Companion, and then cast it to gain pro everything till his next turn. The turn is then passed to Chandler. He'll start off with a Colossal Grave Reaver. On ETB, he mills 3 cards. This will hit Life from the Loam, Palantir, and Crop Rotation. Sad. It's alright though, he's going to try to keep going. He'll cast a Reanimate targeting Yorion. When Yorion hits the field, ETB trigger will hit the stack, and Chandler responds to it by sacrificing Cephalid Coliseum to dredge Life from the Loam, draw 2, and discard 3. The dredge 3 will hit 2 lands and a Molt Tender. That is it. The Molt Tender at least comes back to the battlefield, and a Sidisi trigger is missed. Then the discard 3 is Life from the Loam, Dakmor Salvage, and the Scarab God. Finally, Yorion's trigger will resolve. Colossal Grave Reaver and Sidisi are exiled. Then that one Sidisi trigger is remembered. After this, Chandler will cast Victimize, sacrificing Molt Tender. This will get Scarab God and Eternal Witness to the battlefield, and Eternal Witness will get Crop Rotation to his hand. Yavimaya Coast is then tapped for a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth green, and sacrifice 2 Crop Rotation to get Field of the Dead to the battlefield. I think he's got enough lands, he makes a zombie. Finally, Chandler will move to his end step and return his 2 exiled cards and mill a total of 6. But he doesn't hit a dang thing. He's got one last chance though. He'll pay 4 mana to Scarab God to make a 4/4 version of Stitcher Supplier. Once again, 3 cards are milled, and once again, nothing is hit. He'll then just pass the turn to Jason. As he passes through combat, he'll draw a card and lose a life and give Jason a counter. Then on his turn, Jason will cast the Mayor of Lamplight. Then he'll cast a Stalwart Shield Bearers. Then Felothar is swung over at Chandler for 6, and Chandler cannot block that because it gains Skulk. Post-combat, Jason will cast a Smile at Death, and then Ethan and Jason both remember a Brina trigger. The turn isn't past Ethan, he'll start off with a Path to Exile targeting Colossal Grave Reaver. It's exiled and Chandler will unfortunately fail to find again. He'll then cast a Professional Facebreaker, and then Aurelia the War Leader. With 2 combats now at his fingertips, Jason says, alright, none of that's coming at me, or I'm going to remove something you like. And Ethan says, how about I just send Aurelia at you? And Jason says, okay, yeah, that's agreeable. So yeah, Aurelia goes over at Jason, and then Brina and Shinid go at Chandler. Since Aurelia swung at Jason, there is a Brina trigger, and she puts counters on herself. Then Ethan realizes if he sends Saskia at Matt, he will get an extra Brina trigger, so he decides to do that, even though Matt won't take damage. Also, it looks like Dihada was plussed at some point. I guess I missed that. I looked ahead, and Ethan gains life equal to the power of Shinid, so Shinid is the one that gets targeted. On to blocks, Chandler will put 2 zombies in front of Shinid, then Shadrix and Yorion will block Brina. Moving to damage, Matt don't care. Chandler will take nothing, 2 zombies and Shadrix will die, and then Jason will take 3, and then Ethan goes to his second combat. Same exact attacks, this time Chandler can't survive so he doesn't bother blocking anything. Anyways, there's 2 more Brina triggers, so Aurelia gets the 4 counters this time. Ethan wants to get that extra damage on Jason while staying within their agreement. So yeah, Chandler is hella dead, Jason takes 7, and Matt's still just chilling. Ethan remembers he gets some professional face triggers, and then he'll pass the turn to Matt. The first thing Matt will do on his turn is draw with the One Ring, then he'll cast a Solve the Equation. This will find him Rapid Hybridization. He'll pass the turn. Jason stops on instep though to Anguished Unmaking Dihada, then we'll move to his turn. Smile of Death trigger on upkeep will return Tree of Redemption and Wall of Omens. Then Felothar is activated to sacrifice the tree, draw big number. And what do you know, Jason finds and casts a board wipe. It's Expel the Interlopers. Ethan sacks a treasure to exile Champion of Lamb Holt from the top of his library, and then the Interlopers will resolve. Chosen number is 2, so dang near everything dies. Jason will then move to combat, and he swings 3 at both Ethan and Matt. The shield bearers go at Matt. Matt responds with Rapid Hybridization to try to blow it up. Jason's got Heroic Intervention though. Matt then responds with a Baby Rift targeting Felothar. This means walls will not do any damage. Ethan still takes 1 though. Post-combat, Jason will cast a Crashing Drawbridge, then a Birds, and then a Walking Bulwark. He then has a lot of cards to discard on his cleanup. Let's move to Ethan's turn now. He'll cast Lelia and then Karlak. Ethan will then move to combat and swing Lelia over at Matt. There is an attack trigger. Felothar Stone is exiled and Lelia gets a counter. Matt decides to take the 3 damage. There's also an extra combat. Lelia is swinging at Matt again. This time he will block. Lelia exiles Primeval's Glorious Rebirth and gets an additional counter. The turn is then passed to Matt. He's got a lethal 1-ring trigger on the stack. He draws 2 in response to see if there's anything he can do about it. There is not. He is dead. On to Jason's turn. On upkeep, Orin Frostfang and Arbor Adherent return to the battlefield. He'll then cast Reunion of the House, and after looking at every single creature in his graveyard, he only has a total of 9 power, so that returns his entire graveyard to the battlefield.
Rampart Architect, a Welcoming Vampire, Shadrach Silverquill, Weathered Sentinels, Wall of Blossoms, Sylvan Caryatid, Bedrock Tortoise, Doran the Siege Tower, Tree of Redemption, Perimeter Captain, Shield Sphere, Overgrown Battlements, and a Wingmantle Chaplain.
Holy crap, there are a lot of ETB triggers. Alright, let's see what they all are. He draws a couple cards, then he'll make a 1/3 wall, then a total of 18 1/1 birds. Then he'll cast a Shield Wall Sentinel, and this tutors him Tree of Perdition. Okay, I see where this is going. Tree of Perdition is cast, Crashing Drawbridge is activated, so now everything has haste. Then he'll cast a Canopy Gargantuan, and then he'll make Ethan's life total 13, and now with everything having haste, he just has to turn everything sideways at Ethan. So yeah, rip my boy Ethan, he is hella dead here. But he did put up a good fight, unlike Chandler. What a loser. Anyways, congratulations to Jason and Felothar on the win. Pfft, you thought there was gonna be an outro? Heck no. This game has taken me way too long to edit. I've got nothing to say to you, other than, hey, thanks for watching. Hope you all have a smooth day.